2.5 years after the fact, Democrats and the media are still insisting January 6th is worse than Normandy, Pearl Harbor, and September 11th combined. They have to do that because they are trying desperately to hide not only exactly what happened that day, but why it happened and how they are 100% completely involved in it. Rosie the Riveter here, dropping more truth bombs to destroy fake news and propaganda. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the video and hit the notification bell to get new videos when they are uploaded. Now, let's get into today's riveting topic. If you listen to today's Democrats, you would think questioning the results of an election is something that has never been done before and is worthy of great punishment. To be honest, I would bet George Washington's elections were probably the last American ones where shenanigans, questioning, and election denial did not occur. Democrats objected to all three Republican victories in the 21st century alone. Anyone remember the hanging Chad fiasco of 2000, where Americans had to endure weeks of people combing through every single ballot in several Florida counties looking for more votes for Gore? This is exactly what Trump was asking Governor Kemp to do in Georgia, but instead of a review of the ballots, he got indicted. The Democrats were determined to keep counting every Chad, every dimple, and every tiny little scratch until they found the votes they needed, but were finally forced to stop as it became ridiculous to watch as the votes just weren't there. I've shown in other videos all the Democrats on the floor of the House of Representatives objecting to their state's electoral votes, exactly what Republicans were doing when January 6th happened. But somehow it's the Republicans only who are unpatriotic. So, to understand the events of that day, you first need to review the electoral vote process. Per Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 of the Constitution, each state shall appoint, as such manner as the legislature thereof may direct, a number of electors. In our country's first couple of elections in several of the states, their lawmakers alone decided who received their electoral votes, not the citizens. Even when citizens do vote, which technically is for the electors and not actually the president, the final decision and verification still remains with the legislatures, with the governor then certifying them. In 2020, Secretary of States verified their election results, bypassing the lawmakers, and then send their electors to the governor. Exercising their constitutional right and duty for redress, citizens filed lawsuits in several states to implore their lawmakers to determine if their state election results were accurate and the proper electors were chosen. During the hearings, poll workers and watchers, data analysts, and other pertinent whistleblowers, both Republican and Democrat, testified before state congresses about the irregularities and questionable election behavior that they witnessed. Social and legacy media covered up and censored this at the time, but current lawsuits and investigations are finally exposing it all. Lawmakers at those hearings heard witness testimony regarding drop boxes, poll watchers being restricted from watching the vote counting, machine abnormalities, and ballots being dropped off in the middle of the night after the deadline and counted. Many revealed that thumb drives were illegally tampered with by voting machine employees, along with other proof of vote and ballot tampering. As a result of these hearings and evidence, Michigan, Arizona, Georgia, Wisconsin, New Mexico, Nevada, and Pennsylvania legislatures sent alternate electors to Washington, as is their right and duty per the Constitution. The media immediately painted these alternate electors as fake electors, conveniently forgetting how they pleaded with electors in 2016 to change their votes and go against the will of the voters then. In true Banana Republic fashion, Democrat AGs are now indicting these alternate electors, which Seems to be interesting timing, being 2.5 years after the fact and just a year before the next election. So this brings us to January 6th and why things seemed to have blown up then. Our founding fathers understood tyranny and realized there would come a time when overwhelming fraud and cheating would infiltrate our elections. Therefore, when such a time occurs that election integrity questions exist, the Constitution and an 1887 Act allow 3 remedies for citizens and lawmakers to rectify the situation on the federal level. All 3, if allowed to proceed properly, could have given Trump a second term. The first involves the vice president and the alternate electors. Per the 12th Amendment, the vice president opens the certificates for the electors and counts them. Since constitutionally the electors are chosen by the state legislatures, it was argued he would have had to accept the alternate electors appointed by the lawmakers over those submitted by the Secretary of States, which would have given Trump the victory. Another option would have been for Pence to throw both sets of electors out for those states. He declined to do either. If Pence would have thrown out the electors in question, no one would have received the necessary 270 electoral votes needed for the presidency, sending the election to the House of Representatives, the second recourse, where each state would have received 1 vote to cast for the president. Since 28 state delegations were controlled by Republicans, America was looking at a second Trump term. The third recourse is the Electoral Count Act of 1887, which allows representatives to object to their state's electors. Basically what the state lawmakers were doing with alternate electors, and is exactly what was beginning when rioters breached the Capitol. For an objection to be entertained, Republicans knew it required 1/5 of the senators to sign off on it. Therefore, they lobbied senators until they found enough, starting with Josh Hawley, followed by Ted Cruz, and 10 others, meeting the 1/5 requirement. If they hadn't, I don't believe the January 6th would have happened, as the objections would have never moved forward. Let me explain. Objections did not automatically overturn the election. All they did was stop the proceedings, so the 2 chambers could separate, debate, and vote on what to do. One resolution could include rejecting the electors, sending them back to the states where they would review and audit the election results and verify the electors that were sent were accurate. Think about it. If the election was totally on the up and up, an audit of the votes would put to rest any question of fraud and cheating. The Democrats should have welcomed that to put any resistance to bed, and they could have easily rubbed their victory in the Trump supporters' faces. But instead, they pushed back as hard as they possibly could, claiming that questioning an election, something they've been doing for decades, was not only unpatriotic, they're now prosecuting it. Trump supporters were protesting the election, but were doing so legally and constitutionally, just like the Democrats had done with Trump and Bush. But there was one major problem this time for them. Republican senators were going to object to the electors, which would have allowed debate and quite possibly state election audits to verify the results. And there's the rub. This is why January 6th happened. The objection process could not be allowed to go forward, and audits could not be conducted. Less than 10 minutes before Mike Pence and the senators were to enter the House chambers at 1 p.m., rioters on the west of the Capitol building started overwhelming the police. Trump was still speaking to his supporters at an area about a 45-minute walk away, so those rioting would not have been at his speech. Let's think about this logically for a moment. Congress was just about to start the process to object to the election, an objection Trump supporters wanted to happen. They just spent weeks lobbying for it. So why on earth would they jeopardize that by storming the Capitol at the precise moment it was all beginning? They wanted audits to verify the results. They just wanted it all reviewed, and that process was what was starting to happen. The only ones who would have anything to gain by shutting it down were those who knew there was something to find there. When Trump ended his speech at 1:10 p.m., after telling his supporters they were going to head to the Capitol and peacefully and patriotically protest the election, police were getting ready to evacuate Kamala Harris from the DNC headquarters due to a pipe bomb. Here's what January 6th investigative reporter Steve Baker has concluded regarding the pipe bombs after his endless hours of research.
But I will tell you this: we know that the pipe bombs themselves were inoperable. They were stunt pieces. They were never intended to go off. They were basically diversionary tactics because the first one was found in the minutes before the first barricade breach at about 12:52 p.m. that day, and then the second was found just after that. And when both of those were found, and you can hear it on the Capitol Police radio comms, which I've heard all of them. I've heard hours and hours of their radio communications. I've read the transcripts. That there is absolutely was chaos in that moment, because now the undermanned Capitol Police, which is a whole other story in and of itself, is why a department with almost 2,000 uniformed officers that day only had a couple of hundred available on campus at the time. And then they were additionally diverted because those pipe bombs were found at buildings under the purview and the responsibility of the Capitol Police themselves.
The full interview is fascinating, and I linked it below, and I encourage you to watch it. At 1:12 p.m., Representative Paul Gosar and Senator Ted Cruz objected to certifying Arizona's electors. At that point, the House and Senate prepared to separate to debate the objection in their own chambers. By 1:26 p.m., Capitol Police are evacuating at least 2 Capitol complex buildings due to the pipe bomb scare, with people starting to push up the Capitol steps at 1:30. We now have video that proves that instigators with suspected links to the FBI were in the crowd, pushing the crowd forward towards the Capitol at just that right moment. Likewise, video proves police not only moved the barriers to allow this to happen, they invited people into the Capitol. Let's process that for a moment. Fake bombs cause buildings to be evacuated moments before police pull barricades and invite people into the Capitol. The media immediately start reporting congressmen are fleeing because people are storming the Capitol. This is not an insurrection by people who believe the election was rigged, ladies and gentlemen. This was a cover-up by the people who stole it. I encourage you to watch Tucker Carlson's interview with former Capitol Police Chief Steve Sun. It's linked below. He reveals what happened on his end on January 6th and legitimately questions who really was behind it all. When Congress reconvened hours later, Nancy Pelosi triggered an emergency session, allowing her to bypass all 3 methods of contesting the election. Most importantly, the congressional objections that were starting, and go straight to verification. The Riot allowed her this option. What a convenient coincidence for her. Get it yet? The Riots not only allowed several Republican senators, for reasons I can only suspect, to bow out of objecting, it gave the Democrats and media the cover they needed to squash and censor all legitimate and valid questioning and review of the election. Poof! Just like that, it was all gone, and it was all Trump's fault. When it was over, Nancy Pelosi immediately impeached Trump before appointing a committee to supposedly investigate January 6th. Since Pelosi denied McCarthy's picks to the committee, preventing any impartiality or true legitimacy to it, I guess we'll just have to take their word everything was on the up and up, since they illegally destroyed all their records of it. Also, Democrats continued to demonize Trump, saying he tried to force Pence to overturn the election, something they claim he wasn't legally able to do. But if that's true, if Pence really wasn't able to count the alternate electors, then why did the Democrats in the House pass a new law making sure the VP could not do that? Simple. They knew he could. They also knew it is valid to object to the electors, or they wouldn't have done it in 2000, 2004, and 2016. Trump and his supporters were using the law to try to clarify and rectify what they saw as an invalid election, actions Democrats themselves have taken. So ask yourself, if it was such a perfect election, if everything was done legally and properly, and Biden actually did receive 81 million legitimate votes, why did they shut down every possible attempt to be able to prove that to the American people? One more thing to think about. Now, let's say you hate Trump, and you're happy Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats did everything they could to prevent Trump from returning to the White House. If Trump really did win the election, and they took that victory from him, who are the real tyrants here? Who are the true dictators? And if the election was truly stolen from him, who are the real insurrectionists? I'm Rosie the Riveter, but that's my 2 cents. But what do you think? Leave your comments down below. If you enjoy my content, please consider supporting my work on Patreon. You can find all my videos on my blog, Liberating Letters, at thefactspaper.com. You can also start your own research on the Facts Paper by exploring the thousands of links to articles I have, including those noted in my videos, sharing the truth fake news propagandists won't. Investigate and discover the truth for yourself.